Hi, everybody. I'm Scott Cochran, and welcome to ControlsCon. Okay, this is a lot hotter than I thought it'd be. If you see sweat coming down my brow, it's because I am sweating, because it's like wearing a snowsuit in Texas, right? But thank you all for being here today. We're super excited to have y'all. Cochran Supply, we just, that video that Joe created for us, that's a picture of our journey, Cochran Supply. You guys saw those old Cowboys with those pneumatic brands, right? And then we moved into the time of DDC when we had connected systems. And then all of a sudden, what happened? Tritium came along, Niagara. And then what happened? We connected everything to the internet and each other. And then we took off. We took off as an industry, and here we are in outer space, and we're playing with OT networks and AI. We're dealing with cybersecurity and a whole new way of life, just like we did when we transitioned from pneumatics. And we're super excited, Cochran Supply, to be here with all you folks to share with you where we're at in this journey. And with us, we've brought some of the best vendors in the BAS space, and they're here to show you what they can do. And we're here to keep you guys as current as you can in the BAS industry. So we're super excited to be in Texas as well. And of course, with that, we decided to make this a cowboy to astronaut Odyssey to kind of, because as we come into Texas, we kind of feel like we're cowboys, and now we're going into Houston, so now we're turning into astronauts, and so just kind of like our industry, right? So just like the story here in Texas, the story of BAS, the story of Cochran, and I think it's a story we can all share together. And so we're here to push that along. And so to get started today, I'm going to invite one of my good, very, very old friends from the industry, one of my mentors early on, Ken Sinclair with Automated Buildings.
I can now, sorry.
Hey, there we go. Away we go.
Away we go.
All right, thank you. All right, Ken. So Ken, welcome to ControlsCon 2024, Texas. Super glad you could join us this morning. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Ken Sinclair, Ken is the editor and founder of AutomatedBuildings.com, which is an online magazine that really is there to collaborate all of your efforts and all of our manufacturers' efforts in one place. And Ken, actually, he retired as a consulting engineer, and he decided to do this in his retirement, and here we are, how many years later?
25 plus.
25 plus. And for me, when I was a young man in the automation industry, I came in about 25 years ago, and AutomatedBuildings.com was like this little beacon of information, this independent information source that allowed me to kind of stretch my legs a little, if you may. And as I grew to enjoy working with the magazine, I started to publish some stuff in it. Ken and I became close friends, and we've been working together now for about the last 10 plus years. Ken, can you tell us a little bit more about AutomatedBuildings.com?
Sure. So obviously we've been at it for 25 years. We've kind of evolved, and you were a big part of that evolution from the old monthly model to an online cloud stuff, which you had to take the old guy and dust him off and tell him what clouds look like. So we got inside this cloud, and it's been working well. I think we've been online. We're coming up into our second year. It's been great, but through our history, our industry has been a self-interest clash of clans, creating messages from different universes and even galaxies. Just generally a lot of noise of individual voices. But what we saw was a need to regroup as a unified OT, IoT industry, and the providers of the real world interaction stuff, because that's really what we do. There's a lot of patter going on about cloud native and embedded AI power. But in the final analysis, we're the people who make it all happen. And we push data up to the clouds to feed the AI monster and to feed cloud native. But in the final analysis, we're the people who send the signal to move the damper, to start the fan. And so we are the OT industry. And I think we've kind of confused everybody because we tell everybody our flavor of the industry. But when we're talking in general public, we need to identify as we're the folks that make it happen. The theme of your ControlCon, the chaos Odyssey is great because that's exactly where we are. But OT is right in the middle of AI cloud native blizzard. And if you think you're busy now, you haven't seen anything yet. And another thing that excites me is that AI has the ability to solve this incredible problem we have now with talent shortage. And what it allows us to do is to do more with the people we have. And it's basically a hamburger helper for our labor shortage. So that's the way I kind of see it.
Ken,
what's your thoughts?
Well, that was a lot of thoughts there for one mouthful. Well, just kind of like Ken, one of the things about your magazine I found, and this is something that for all of you to consider, is we as an industry, we're a small group of people, believe it or not. Well, we can bring us together and it looks like there's a lot of us. In reality, we're a small group and there's really not a lot of places where we can go to learn new information. And one of the important things I found through my career is that when I started sharing information with automated buildings, I started learning a lot more. And I encourage all of you who are pushing the limits with technology, with applications, with your businesses, that, sharing within this environment is helpful for yourself because it'll teach you how to learn other stuff too. And I think it's important for all our business development. So I encourage all of you not only to check out automated buildings, but also to consider posting some stuff up there. The way we built automated buildings going forward is it's essentially a repository which anyone can come in and contribute to. And we encourage all sorts of new thoughts and ideas for the industry, right, Ken?
Very much so. And yeah, that's one of our go-to-markets is the ability for our sponsors to actually post directly in their own words and their own multimedia messaging. I think that was the old model. We just used to publish words, but now we provide connections to YouTube videos, whatever the trick of the day is, the multimedia of the day, we connect to it. And then we also share it with our reasonably large social media. So what we've done is rather than keep the interaction inside of our website, we reach out and we use LinkedIn is probably our favorite platform, but we do support X and we do support Facebook, Instagram, and even Pinterest. It's a connection medium, I guess. It's very easy to post. One thing we've just found is for the smaller vendors and contractors that wish to communicate is they typically may or may not have a social media presence. And what we're actually doing is becoming that person that they post on automated buildings and then we forward it to these other social media. So it allows them to have a social media presence without having a brand manager working that.
Yeah, Ken, agreed. So for all of you, Ken is online every day. He's going through all your LinkedIn posts, your Instagrams, your Facebook posts, and then he's learning and sharing them with the community. Ken, what are some of your takeaways of some of the hot trends that you're seeing people with a lot of interest in your magazine today, or things that you're noticing out there that are growing in interest in the community?
Well, of course, cloud native and AI are just dominating all the trending right now, and I think rightly so because it's going to have a big effect on our industry, and a lot of us are chitter-chattering about what that might mean to us, and I think we've all are dipping our toes in, but I think we need to share our experiences. I think the exciting part of AI is is how it can amplify our industry to have a greater impact. And I think Cochran has done an amazing job of that in some of the sessions we had at AHR. There was just some great stuff. Another thing, just a simple example, how automated buildings is starting to use AI is we're starting to use AI to read these incredible YouTubes that we've created and Cochran has created to basically go through and prepare. I don't know if you have it in the United States. Up here, we have the thing called the Cole Notes, which you used to, the cheat sheet when you were trying to study. And what it did is it did a summary of what it is you needed to know. And by turning AI loose on YouTubes, we're able to extract a lot of information and do some brief notes and convince you whether you want to spend the hour to move through the YouTube to see what was actually said. So yeah, just a lot of opportunities going on. The other underlying theme is just a lot of people are jumping into the employment problem that we have. There's a lot of folks in the industry that are approaching my age that are still out there, and we've got to replace them. And when we replace them, they come with all of these tools. They understand cloud native, they understand AI, and that is going to allow us to grow quicker. But the other trend, which is interesting, is us reaching down to a labor market we've never touched before, which is right down into the high schools. And what Stacks and Jewels is doing is just getting folks involved who traditionally would not have been involved in our industry. So kudos to all.
Yeah, well, kudos to you, Ken, for everything you do for us. We so appreciate you, and for all of you. Also, if you want to hear more from Ken, he does. There's a thing called Monday Live that he attends, and he's involved in those. And then, of course, at AHR next year will be in. Anybody know? Orlando. So Ken will be in Orlando, and we'll be hosting free education sessions there as well. But thank you, Ken, for your participation today, and we'll see you soon. Thank you so much.
You forgot to mention Realcomm.
Oh, sorry, and Realcomm. Ken's daughter will be at Realcomm, and Ken will be. You'll be up there too, right? So
yeah.
So, thank you, Ken.
Have a great show. I wish I was there.
Thanks, Ken. We'll see you soon.
See you. Bye.
Okay, so we work real close with Ken Sinclair in Automated Buildings, and another organization that's really taught me a ton, and another one of my mentors in the industry is a man named Jim Young with Realcomm. And I'm going to invite Jim online to join us now, if we're ready. Dialing in. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Realcomm, it's the largest real estate technology conference in the country. It's hosted by a man named Jim Young, who's been doing this for 20 plus years. Jim's like the Nostradamus of controls. So he starts talking about stuff like 5 years before it happens. And I'm really excited for him to come and share with us some of his latest findings. Realcomm this year will be hosted in Tampa. And it's not too late to register, but it's another great event if you want to continue to jump down this rabbit hole of technology and BAS. And I think we're about ready. Is Jim ready? Hi, Jim.
Scott, how are you?
I'm great. How are you today?
Good.
Good.
You guys staying out of trouble there?
For the most part. I think there may have been a gondola ride last night, but that was about the worst of it, I would say. So, so Jim, are you ready to take over?
I am ready. Yeah.
All right. Well,
first of all, thank you for having me.
Of course.
I really appreciate it. And maybe if you guys can get a camera view on you so I can see the audience, that would be helpful. All right. So again, first of all, thanks for having me. And I know I've been doing this conference for a few years, And I really wish I could have been there. It's just my calendar is nonstop, as you can imagine. We're about 5 weeks out, and the details are just overwhelming. And so I appreciate you letting me come in remotely. So I guess what we're going to do is I'm going to present a couple slides, and I'm going to get your feedback, Scott, and then you're going to ask the audience, and we're going to get through this pretty quick. So I'm going to spend about 2 minutes on the past, and then I'm going to get us right to the current, and then I'm going to spend probably the most time about the future. So we came up with this slide a number of years ago, just to kind of quantify where the building automation market was. The past, we'll call that traditional building automation, proprietary, closed, one building, one system, one vendor. For about the last 20 years, we've been in the smart, connected, open, integrated, interoperable, IP-centric. And in the future, there's been all this talk about buildings, IoT, smart edge cloud, artificial intelligence. We actually had the word artificial intelligence on the slide 6-7 years ago. So what's happening now really wasn't a surprise to us. And what we ask people to do is tell us what number are you, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And for all of you in the audience, I would suspect you're at least 3, and then moving on to 4. And there may even be a couple of you who have jumped full on in and are trying to understand what building IoT really means.
Jim, sorry to interrupt you, but we're not seeing your slides, guys.
Oh,
Yeah.
that would help, wouldn't
Yeah.
it? Give me 1 second. So sorry. How's that?
That's better. Thank you. Yeah, you're on. Yep.
All right. Sorry about that. So anyway, these were the 3 that I just mentioned: past, present, and future. And each of you in the room can really kind of quantify where are you in your journey. And I think when I'm done, you're going to see that we're all going to need to get to 5 a lot sooner than we expected. All right. So you probably have seen this illustration if you've heard me speak before. We came up with this concept. We started talking about it in 2002, so that's 22 years ago. All the disparate systems onto a network, protected through some type of a database of some sort. And then ultimately, the holy grail in the top right corner is business process automation, or you're going to really start hearing a lot more about autonomous buildings, machine to machine. That's not new, but it really is starting to getting to the point, especially with artificial intelligence, that machines are going to be talking to each other in a much more robust way, and hopefully with some human in the middle. All right, now I'm going to get us to, that was the past. This is today. This is what we're going to be starting our conference with. These are the top 15 trends that we're seeing going on in the real estate industry as it relates to technology. I'm not going to read through all of them. If you want to see this illustration, it's up on our website and About Us. I'm just going to pick a couple. Artificial intelligence, smart connected buildings really coming into their own. ESG, of course, the E in ESG, cyber, a big topic. Occupant experience. And then, of course, in-building wireless, 5G, 6G, 7G. All of you in the room are going to be dealing much more with these new wireless technologies because they're just moving at such a pace. In fact, what we're used to in the United States with 5G is not what you would see with 5G if you travel to China, for example. We're not keeping pace with the functionality and with the applications that other countries are grabbing onto as it relates to wireless communications. So I'm not going to go through all 15, but I really would encourage you to go take a look at this, print it out, and then there's documents and different information on our website that goes into detail on each of these. All right, so you've seen this illustration before. This is when you take that smart building concept and you apply it to a district or a city, which means it gets applied to more than one building. We have a number of people now in our world. In fact, we're going to have some announcements at the conference by some very, very, very large real estate players that are recommitting, doubling down on the next chapter of their smart building journey. So we came out with this document probably 10 years ago, and it's coming true. It came true, and more people are adopting the concept that you put a network in the middle of your building automation strategy, IT-centric, and that's kind of the way to go. All right, so Scott, before I move on to the future, any questions on what I've talked to your group about over the last couple of years, the past?
Well, Jim, I mean, looking back, really, what technologies would you say that you know were the ones that popped out the quickest of the ones that you mentioned? Like, is it, which ones are the ones that you feel like are moving the fastest today of the current ones?
Well, and that's when I'm going to pick 3 out of that list of 15 to give you an idea of how fast and how furious it is moving. And artificial intelligence has got to be at the top of that list. And so in the old days, we called it data, and then we called it business insight, business intelligence, data lakes, data oceans. I mean, we've come up with all these different names, but now more than ever, because of the power of artificial intelligence, the data architecture has to be figured out. Data repository from HVAC, lighting, access control, all the different building systems has got to be in a format now where artificial intelligence can actually be applied to it. You can't apply artificial intelligence to disparate or unorganized data. So I'd say the top 3, and that's what I want to talk about today, is artificial intelligence, cybersecurity. Massive changes going on in the cyber world, and then a new one that your audience may not be really paying much attention to or focused on, and that's low voltage. As it applies to the next chapter, or even in some cases the next book of the smart building journey.
Jim, when you brought up AI to the real estate group, the CIOs especially, what was their reaction at first?
So our journey started, I believe it was in 2016 or 2017, where we first introduced artificial intelligence on our stage. On it, Yardi was on, and I believe Nino from Tritium was actually on the stage. And I asked both of those guys, what they thought about AI, and neither one had really thought about it much. But we also had Cade Metz, a New York Times reporter who was there when the Korean Go champion was beaten by Google's DeepMind AI engine. And Cade said he was sitting behind the engineers, and he heard them say, do you know what's going on? And the other engineer said, I have no idea what it's doing or how it's doing it, okay? So 2016 is when we first talked about it. Then we all fell asleep like the rest of the world until ChatGPT was announced in October or late fall of 2022. The world woke up. Everybody started paying attention. We took that as our sign to jump in. We had lots of conversations at RealCom last year in Las Vegas about AI, but they were more general. The CIOs or the engineers, the facilities people, they kind of looked at it. It's like, yeah, it's coming, but there's nothing real. We decided to have a conference in Palo Alto in the middle of Silicon Valley. It was called Buildings AI Symposium, to bring everybody who wanted to get on an airplane and talk about AI for the built environment. It was kind of a honeypot. We wanted to see who was going to come. We wanted to see who was leaning in. It was an extraordinary, successful event just because we got to meet all the early adopters. From there, we formed an AI advisory group, about 50 real estate companies, and we've been on phone calls every month since December. And then that led to what's happening at our conference, and I'll go into that in a couple minutes. So everybody, I'd say 5-10% have leaned in, 20-30% are playing around, and 50% are kind of waiting to see what happens. But after I give this few brief slide presentation, I think you're going to see that things are moving much faster than anybody expected.
Yeah, let's dive in, Jim.
Okay. All right. So I mentioned Buildings AI. This is the event that we had in Palo Alto in November of last year. Had about 200 people or so, and it was I'd say most of the conversations had to do with the enterprise side, the back end operations. Although we had some incredible demonstrations on camera systems with AI applied to it. Obviously, the facial recognition, bringing up a lot of privacy issues, but it accomplished our goal. We met the early adopters in a room and started a very robust conversation on AI for the built environment. From that AI advisory group, these are all the case studies that we've come up with over the last 6 months or so. Data management, legal management, investment management, human resources, building optimization. That's where the smart building conversation comes in. Cybersecurity, that applies to the smart building. Workplace optimization can be pulled right into smart building. Marketing, customer service, business process efficiency, lease management, financial analysis, building design and construction, and document management. We popped up this use case summary pretty quick, and I think this is probably the most robust collection of use cases for the built environment as it relates to AI. So we're pretty proud of this. This slide will be featured at the conference, and we're going to be going obviously into a great amount of detail. All right, so now I'm going to fast forward to last week. I went to the AI Expo in Washington, D.C., hosted by Eric Schmidt, former CEO and chairman of Google, very influential guy. Started an organization called SCSP, the Special Competitive Studies Project, kind of following Nelson Rockefeller of the 50s with his Special Studies Project. The idea here is the world's changing. If the United States does not get its act together, we will be overtaken by China, and with the main tool being technology. And so he said, we've got to get everything moving. They held this conference in Washington. The players there were unbelievable. Eric Schmidt, we had congressmen, senators, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I saw Google, DeepMind, OpenAI, Grok. All the new technology players were there. I saw a 5-inch drone that was flown by an 8-year-old girl because they inserted AI into the drone. I had a picture taken of me, and I was profiled from the shirt and suit I was wearing to the color of my hair in about 3 seconds. There was a demo there of a person arguing with AI, meaning the latency has gotten incredible, and they were the human and AI were interrupting each other. But what I walked out of that event was, this is serious. This is not going away. This could potentially be the largest technology paradigm shift in my career, which is almost 40 years now. And if you don't think it's real, I suggest you come to our conference and see firsthand, because if you wait for this one, it's going to leave you. It's going to leave you in the dust. Now, this was last week. How about this? In 2017, in Japan and Europe, they had AI expos, and in the case of Japan, 40,000 people came to an event in 2017 to talk about artificial intelligence. Okay, and if you go back to this event that I was at last week, there was maybe 7,000. So this is a wake-up call for the country. We still have the best AI technologies, which is really fortunate, but we as a country have to lean into this. And P.S., we also have to lean into it to make sure that the politicians and the computer and technology companies don't take us in directions like China, where we turn into a surveillance state. And we have to take privacy into consideration. We have to take civil liberties into consideration. And if you are all not involved, your politicians are going to make decisions without you. And so I would suggest that everybody start taking AI pretty serious. And if you don't believe me, please go to YouTube and just type in GPT-4o. O stands for Omni. This was released 3 days ago. And watch this 26-minute demo conversation. And if it doesn't freak you out, I would suspect you don't have a pulse, okay? And so these AI devices are looking at images and making decisions. They solve the math equation. They take computer code and give it to AI and say, are there any improvements I can make? This thing is real. It's moving faster than anybody expected, and everybody in that room is going to be impacted because the multitude of systems and the data that those systems generate are going to be impacted by AI at some point in time. And if you're not ready for it, I guarantee you your customers are going to start asking you questions about it.
For sure.
This is what we're doing with AI at the conference. It's everywhere. It's in the Cyber Forum. It's in the CIO Roundtable. It's in the event we put together specifically for your group, the integrators. We've had the Smart Building Integrator Summit that Scott has chaired for probably 6-7 years now. We're going to be talking about AI there. But most importantly, we're going to talk about AI in the Buildings AI Symposium. We've got Microsoft senior executives coming in to talk about Copilot for security, Azure AI. Our conference has got, and then last but not least, the AI Showcase is going to sit right next to the Smart Building Showcase. And we got to think about 15 AI case studies, some on the back end of this automation side and a few on the smart building side. But if you are all interested in AI for your career or for your company, this is the best place in the world in 2024 to learn about AI for the built environment.
Yeah,
that's
Jim,
it on AI, Scott.
Jim,
Any
real
questions?
quick, how many in the audience are using AI, ChatGPT, or any of those tools today? I'm just curious. So looks like about half of you. How many of you are your kids using ChatGPT? Yeah. So that, we talk about the next generation. We talk about how hard it is to staff today. And I challenge you all to rethink that paradigm, because with what these tools do for the next generation, they're going to come in with a new skill set that's really going to reset our thinking about how we work in the future. So just something to consider, right? So cool. So Jim, we're killing. We're going to run over. So we got like 3 minutes left.
Do you want me to stop here, or do you want me to
No. Let's do cybersecurity, please. It's a super important topic. Yeah.
Okay. Cybersecurity, our journey started 10 years ago, and with a room of 40 people. That's grown into a organization called the Real Estate Cyber Consortium, of which I'm one of the co-founders and sit on the executive committee. If you're interested in cyber for the built environment, you should be involved in REC. Your one and only Greg Fitzpatrick is...
Greg, could you stand up real quick, folks? Greg Fitzpatrick. There he is. And Jim, please continue.
Greg is our distinguished leader. He keeps all the cats herded together. This is the executive committee of REC. You've got the probably about 20 billion square feet of real estate represented, trying to figure out what cybersecurity means to the built environment. Oh, and P.S., there's an extreme overlap at this conference last week. The conversations between AI and cybersecurity were all over the floor in the program, on the exhibit floor. So if you're trying to protect those building systems when the bad guys are starting to get into those systems more and more, there's at least today a 15% chance that they're going to be using artificial intelligence to attack the buildings that you are installing equipment in.
Yeah, and Jim, how many square feet does that group represent, you mentioned, like in terms of built space?
15 to 20 billion square feet.
Yeah, and what's really neat about this group is they're all, for the most part, chief information officers that are managing OT networks for these large building portfolios. And one of the things that Greg and us, Cochran and Jim and the whole community, we realize is that best practices for building like BAS cybersecurity are still being determined. And groups like this are super influential in helping us understand that. And so we work closely with them, and we try to help you all understand what we think are the, essentially the best policies we're seeing from those groups.
On a call yesterday, Scott, we were working, or one of the working groups is putting together a document that starts at the design and construction phase that lies out the cybersecurity infrastructure for the building. So they're in at the beginning of the conversation, not the end. Once that document is thrown on the desk of a construction company or a contractor, they're now liable to implement those kind of practices. And if they don't, and that building is ever hacked, they're responsible. And I would believe that the integrator is going to be pulled into that conversation as well.
For sure. Thanks, Jim. Yep.
Okay, these are the companies some of the companies that are represented. This is the agenda. If any of you got a camera out, take a shot of this. If not, this is up on our website. This is a 3-hour program on cybersecurity for the built environment. We've got our keynote opening is going to be somebody who ran NSA for 30 years. And is going to talk about stuff that maybe at one time was highly secret, but they will share with us the risks and the liabilities of buildings as it relates to cybersecurity. That is right there. You're looking at it, the #1 conversation on cybersecurity for the built environment in the world, and it's going to be happening in 4.5 weeks in Tampa. Probably not too far for all of you. All right. Do I have a couple more minutes, because this is a fun one?
Sure. Well. We never finish on time, do we, Alicia, Jim and I? Have we ever finished a meeting on time? Never.
How much over are we?
We're 1 second now. Go for it.
All right, so the journey that I talked about earlier, the smart, connected, integrated, interoperable, IT-centric, that journey started 20 years ago. So if some of you in the audience still don't have IT folks on your teams, if you still aren't embedding, an IT device or edge devices into your strategies, that ship has left the docks 20 years ago. Okay, and that is becoming more mainstream. The next chapter, or in some cases, the next book is going to be low voltage. We use that one wire to connect all the systems, to control those systems, and to use the data. That's what we've done for the last 20 years. Now we're adding another conversation, another point to the conversation. That same wire is going to power your devices. And if you don't believe me, this is a Hotel Marcel. This will be talked about at the conference. You're looking at a building that is driven 80, 90% by low voltage, which means lighting systems, some access control camera systems. They finally figured out how to run this by low voltage. And if you think about it, ESG, global warming, carbon footprint, the rough guesstimates are you can reduce a building's energy consumption by 50% when you go from alternating current to low voltage direct current. And this one is a case study. It's just barely opening up. I don't even think this building's officially open. You're looking at a warehouse. All of those lights are low voltage driven by Cat 5 or Cat 6 wires. There's a hotel in Fort Worth, Texas, that is 100% low voltage PoE. If you take a shower, it will remember how long you took, the water temperature, and it'll be stored in the profile. These are the early adopter first starters. I think we're going to have about a half dozen, maybe 8 case studies at the conference. In the general session, we are going to demonstrate low voltage technology that probably 50 people on the planet Earth have seen. So if you want to see the future of lighting, you need to be in that general session on June 20th. That's it.
That's it. Thank you, Jim.
All right.
A little glimpse into the future, folks. I'm telling you, the guy, he's like Nostradamus. I'm telling you, like all this stuff. He's always like maybe 5 years ahead, but still, we're moving quick. And Jim, thank you so much. And I'll see you in Tampa, buddy. I'm going to bring my space cut for Cape Canaveral. I'm going to,
I love it. I love it. Thanks for having me, Scott.
All right. Thank you. All right, Jim. Thank you. All right. So awesome. So yeah, Jim Young, quite a thinker, huh? Getting out there a bit. So of course, we were just talking about stuff that really is the future set of our industry. But today we have real problems. We need real solutions. And so Cochran Supply, we're so fortunate. We feel like we have some of the best vendors that we work with in the space. And so we're super happy. We're going to bring them up, and they're going to tell you a little bit about their stories. So we're going to start with Johnson Controls. I'd like to introduce Bill Schwebel up on stage. Bill? Thank you.
How's that suit? Getting hot yet?
I'm going to go change.
I'll give you some time. So let me grab the little clicker. So that was amazing. And now we are going to try to bring it back to earth, but it won't feel like it. So I'm Bill Schwebel. I'm with Johnson Controls. I'm the Vice President General Manager of our Global Building Automation Systems and Controls Group, which is really at the core of Johnson Controls, is the core of what we do. These are the brands that we represent. Cochran represents a lot of those brands, except for Metasys and Penn, and maybe someday they will. But these are definitely our flagship building automation and controls brands. And we also have your Cochran solutions as well, electromechanical systems. And then we have Envirotech, our clean air solutions. So we have a very broad portfolio. Cochran is one of our most important partners, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about how that all works out. I came to this industry 3 years ago, and I am one of those digital transformation executives. I've gone through the digital transformation that we saw in retail and warehousing, especially through the pandemic with Zebra Technologies. Before that, I worked in the connected car space. Worked in a consortium of companies, started with Microsoft to launch the first connected car, Ford Sync, and now, of course, you see where connected cars have gone in a fairly short amount of time. Ford Sync launched in 2010, and then prior to that, I worked in the internet space. And believe it or not, the internet was analog at one point, and it didn't really go digital until about the year 2000 with broadband and those capabilities. You used to dial up to get to the internet, if you can believe that. But so that's my background, and I'm bringing that into the smart building space. And it's been quite a journey over the past 3 years, and quite a team. So Johnson Controls, just to set some context, I'm sure most of you have heard of the company, but in its current form, all we do is building technologies. and primarily commercial building technologies, which is about 82% of our revenue comes from commercial building technologies in the HVAC, controls, fire, and security space. And it's a global business. We operate pretty much everywhere. And it's really focused on providing the solutions. And that's where we partner with Cochran on providing these solution capabilities to all of the integrators. And as we see the evolution of the technologies and the solutions, we see a lot more coming up through software. And if you look at the HVAC controls on the field devices, et cetera, you look at the building automation systems, the digital and connected service enablement, and the enterprise software, those things are really coming together to provide the smart building platform. And it's not unique to any one supplier. It's not unique to any one customer or any one technology, because this stuff is all in all the buildings. You look around the room here, and any given building probably has a little bit of all this technology in it. And the real challenge for our industry is bringing that all together. Now, Niagara Framework gives us one of the ways to do that. And the Niagara Framework is what powers our Facility Explorer building automation system. And it provides that capability and that common set of tools and that common framework, A, for interconnectivity, and B, to manage the workflows. So we did some research, and we talked to 3,400 decision makers across 18 industries in 25 countries, really to understand what does smart buildings mean to them. And it's really, of course, this convergence, and Jim talked about it, and this convergence of data. You need to have data to be able to process things. And it's that convergence of data across all those systems. But what all these leaders said was their systems are not fully integrated. And that's really impeding their operating efficiencies. It's impeding their customer loyalty. It's causing regulatory penalties because they have things that are not compliant, that they thought were compliant, that aren't connected. It impacts their revenue, and it impacts their brand reputation. And some of that connectivity comes through, and this lack of connectivity comes through, for example, the cybersecurity issue. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of those things in a minute. But if these systems aren't integrated, every one of them could be exposed as a cybersecurity threat. And we're talking to customers now. They don't want to put servers in their buildings anymore. That is such a threat plane for them that they don't want servers in their building. They don't want compute exposed like that in their building. So it's rapidly changing. And Jim talked about how quick this is happening. Also, the majority say that adding or upgrading building automation really helps them support their energy, carbon reduction, and their energy goals. So what are these challenges? And we've all heard these, and you're probably feeling this, and how does this impact all of us? And number one is this talent shortage. And it's pretty interesting to see. I just got exposed. Jim talked about, the Sinclair talked about the Azure Copilot, and how Copilot's now sitting next to all of our coders. So Microsoft runs a platform called GitHub. GitHub is the world's largest source code repository. Copilot sees all that software code and is now helping software developers create code. So we're going to see a rapid shift in the types of functions that we used to have and into new types of functions. So where the talent shortage is really impacting us are the people in the field and the people actually working on the buildings. That's the most acute area. You can't replicate that capability, that physical capability with the systems we have today without some of the smart building sorts of tools. So this digitalization is also a big challenge. If you think of somebody that came up through the industry in the analog world, and they're very comfortable with analog, they can troubleshoot analog, they can take care of issues in analog, all of a sudden now it's digitalization. We saw getting the Teams call going, right? That's a digital function. You need you need an IT expert to troubleshoot that issue. In days gone by, a more mechanically oriented analog person could have handled that problem. So as you move into digitalization, it changes the skill sets, it changes the issues, and the speed at which things happen, and the speed at which things can go wrong. So in a digital world, things can go wrong very quickly, and they don't work. I had an issue with my car recently where the fuel lid didn't stop working. The actuator actually went out on the fuel lid. I didn't even know it had one. And you couldn't operate the car. The car would not run because I couldn't open the fuel lid. So I had to take a screwdriver and open it, and thank God I could put fuel in it and drive the car. But that's where digital goes wrong. Equipment optimization. There's a lot of equipment out there, and a lot of equipment, I'll say almost all of it, is not fully optimized. You look at any building, you look at any system, you see issues with that system. It works okay, it's not something I'm gonna deal with today, maybe it's a low priority, but once you get visibility to that building, you realize how poorly it's performing and how poorly it's operating. And that actually, knowing about it creates more problems, because now you know that you're operating at 50% efficiency or 75% efficiency, et cetera. The other area, and I'm going to talk more about this, is building performance across the full life cycle. If you think of the stakeholders in a building, they really only care about their piece and maybe the next piece, because the next piece can yell at them and say, hey, address that piece. But if you look at the full life cycle, if you look at the systems that we're providing, the solution providers in this room, we're really providing solutions to enable those steps in the life cycle. I'm going to talk more about that. But the building has to perform across that full life cycle. And we do talk about digital, and you look at, and I'm always amazed, coming from the digital tech world, and I walk into a building that's 5 years old. And that building owner thinks that building is brand new, shiny. And I'm looking at it like, oh my God, it's 5 years old, it has previous gen equipment on it, et cetera, et cetera. We've got to upgrade this building, and they think it's still brand new. So that's certainly things that we need to address in this life cycle. We need to do a better job, frankly, about how we support the building life cycle. And especially if you think about, for example, in New York City, the average building is 80 years old, and some of the original building systems are still in those buildings. Budget and financing. This is definitely an acute issue in a lot of the international markets, but you think of budget, which is really your OpEx and your costs, and then financing around your CapEx and how all that works. And cash flow and inflation and all of those things are impacting our industry, impacting our customers especially. And then the risk of cyber attack. I talked about that exposed server that's in a building, and you don't want to be the one to get that phone call that said your system was hacked, right? And especially if it's a critical environment, which a lot of us operate in, we need to do everything we can as an industry to address those challenges. And a lot of the solutions we're talking about helps us with those issues. So we talked about this notion of this smart building going to this autonomous building. And once that building gets connected, so you get it integrated and you get it connected, now you can start to apply things like artificial intelligence. You can apply remote monitoring. Just imagine 1 million connected buildings managed by artificial intelligence, and people that are remote to the building helping out anticipate the types of issues with the building. So that's what we're seeing now. So in Johnson Controls, for example, we ship a chiller. We're connecting that chiller, and it's attached to the cloud, and it's attached to these specialists in the cloud that help the local service techs, the local integrators, et cetera, deal with those issues. That makes this journey to the autonomous building. It's a way to enable that journey. At some point, that building won't need that human in the cloud, or won't need some of those special processes and some of that special data gathering. The system will start working on its own, the way a lot of other systems that are talked about the automotive situation, where the car is pretty autonomous, right? We're starting to see that journey happening with autonomous buildings. So I want to spend a little bit of time on this, and I talked about this life cycle, and I've addressed this a little bit in the past as well. But we're really getting a lot more clarity, especially as we look at some of the solutioning that we're doing in Europe, we're doing in China, we're doing in North America, about the importance of this and how these systems are all really different. But fundamentally, from a platform capabilities perspective, there's a lot of similarities. So of course, everything starts out with the engineering, and there's some engineering folks in the room, system integrators, et cetera, the contractor. And this notion and this panacea of getting to zero engineering. So imagine, being able to go into a system with zero engineering and have it become, with zero commissioning, have it become operational with none of that upfront work, none of that programming sort of work, et cetera. And what are some of the technologies required to do that? Your unified tool chain, plug and play, single source of truth around the data. We've seen other industries do this. The internet in your home or cable TV, remember that, that analog cable TV, which is now digital, and how that's all plug and play, your mobile device. It used to take hours, almost a day, to program your mobile phone, right? Now you walk into AT&T or Verizon, pick up your phone, as you're walking out the door, it's programming, and it's updating to everything you had on your prior phone without you having to do anything. And that's the type of technology that's coming into the building space. And the zero commissioning, this notion, and you think about, all of the stress in that commissioning cycle, right? The project's late, the tenants are coming in, the building needs to be complete, we need that certificate of occupancy, and that commissioning step today is very important. And it's a very important step to make sure that all the systems are validated and I can turn that building over. And imagine the capability where that gets very simplified. You still probably will have commissioning validation by a human that checks the box, but a lot of that work becomes a lot more streamlined when you have these more singular environments that are interworked and interoperable, fully digital, remote capabilities into those buildings, and very continuous sort of activity around that commissioning as things change in the building, that commissioning activity. The autonomous operations, and that's really the real these building owners, facility managers, the panacea of smart facility management, et cetera, where I can self-manage my building, right? And I can take relatively low technical capability people and do some of the plug and play, manage the building, manage that building on more of an autonomous basis, and bring in the specialists when I need them. So, and when those specialists come in, they have the information about what the problem is. It's not, and maybe they can even do it remotely, right? So those of us in the room, we could actually service that building. We don't have to do a truck roll to service that building in that aided autonomous environment. And then finally, future-proof. As you look at the pain of a retrofit, how do you make that a much simpler sort of endeavor? Over-the-air updates, et cetera. Those are all the things that we look at in the retrofit realm. And then what are these enablers, right? The connected assets, this single source of truth. Every device being connected, every device being able to wake up and talk to the internet about who I am and become configured. This master data infrastructure. And the data semantics, we're seeing a lot of advances, and Stephen will talk a little bit more today about some of those things that we're seeing about this critical element. You can't really manage the building if you can't describe it in data. And it's been, probably the biggest Achilles heel for the smart building has been dealing with how do we name all of these, all this equipment, all these points in all these spaces. And then having the flexibility in the architecture. So where do I put the capabilities? It shouldn't really matter. Do I put it in the device on the wall? Do I put it in a controller near the equipment? Do I put it, at one source in the building? Do I put it in the cloud? It really shouldn't matter where a lot of this capability goes, and having that flexibility. And then in order to, have all these systems work together, the openness. And BACnet, thankfully we have BACnet and Modbus, et cetera, but we're gonna have to push those standards more to do what we need to do in the autonomous building space with artificial intelligence, et cetera. And then finally, the most important thing ensuring we're safe and compliant, and the cybersecurity. And it really, what does it drive? The TCO is total cost of ownership. Ultimately, that's what the customers care about. All of this stuff that goes into a building, all of our technology, all of the work we do as suppliers, as integrators, et cetera, is really to drive, better total cost of ownership. And a lot of it comes down to workforce enablement. We're targeting 1 million workers in buildings to really enable with this capability and really start to address how workers are working on the buildings. One of the great things we have in this industry through the Niagara framework is the workbench capability. So a lot of our workers understand how to interact with our building automation systems. Occupant well-being, and that gets back to the revenue piece. A lot of the issues, and it was certainly heightened awareness through the pandemic, but that's a critical element. And people are very sensitive now to what well-being means for an occupant in a building. Energy efficiency goes unsaid, but it's clearly a major issue. And then, as I mentioned, the compliance. So what do we see? And what are we working on? And really, we've talked about this flattening of the architecture, but really you have your equipment and your field devices on the edge. You have some sort of edge control, and that edge control, as I mentioned, can live anywhere. It can live on the device itself. It can live on the equipment. We're working on mechanical equipment that has full BAS capability from the factory, so you don't have to add to it. So it's the dream of factory package controls per se. And so that edge control that starts to be anywhere. You could do that from the cloud. You could do it anywhere in the building, and then all of these capabilities in the software applications and services layer. So that software and that data becoming critically important. So when we start talking about the industry on these planes, it's different than the way we've traditionally thought about the industry in much more of a hierarchical form in the, coming from our analog past. And the focus of our efforts are on these 3 planes, doing really well with the field devices, and ensuring that those field devices have become digitally enabled and become plug and play, and maybe even have some of that edge control. That edge control being more fluid. And this edge control is probably the area where most of the work needs to be done. Because traditionally that edge control, those field controllers, have been fairly simplistic devices, running fairly simplistic, and I don't want to offend anybody, but fairly simplistic control that kind of just keeps doing what it's doing year after year after year. That's changing. In the world of AI, that's changing. That's probably the area, because the software layer, this stuff has been, these software capabilities, industries have been, writing cloud native software for 20 years. So that's all I had. And thank you for considering us. Jonathan Lewis is here. He'll be up with Scott tomorrow, and Randy Elvis back runs our relationship with all our partners through Cochran Supply. So check us out.
Yeah, Bill, before you go, just a quick question. I think the autonomous building conversation is fascinating. Do you feel like that's something like you and I are going to see in our career, just from your viewpoint at Johnson? I mean, is this something, how fast could this come to be a reality?
I think within 5 years, it's going to be the norm.
Really?
Yeah, and I think it's going to happen as fast. Remember in 2007 when the smartphone came out?
Yeah.
And by 2010, that's all everybody had.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
So we're crossing the chasm. So crossing the chasm means when 15% of buildings get connected, you cross that chasm, and we're close to that.
Gotcha. And Johnson Controls, you guys are also, arguably the largest contractor in the space of BAS. How do you see the role of that contracting entity changing as this autonomous, building becomes a reality?
So Johnson Controls, like you said, one of the largest mechanical contractors, and we are seeing this shift, right? We want the ecosystem to handle the local work, more and more. And then we're focusing our efforts on these cloud solution capabilities. And then what needs to happen is the business models need to change and the go-to-market models need to change so that everybody can take advantage of those capabilities. Today, a lot of those capabilities are locked within Johnson Controls. Our challenge is how to open it up to the industry so that you can use the pieces of that capability that you want.
Yeah. Very interesting. And then going back to that autonomous building conversation, Johnson Controls also a leader in the security space, life safety. Could you speak, are those following the same trend you feel like as BAS? Are they going to go with it? Are they going to stay separate? What's your thinking there?
So first off, all this technology is happening in the fire space. It's happening in the security space for sure. And security is one of these domains, very locked. Proprietary, don't let anybody in it. The fire detection space, definitely, similar, but they're all using the same technology and they all use similar sorts of installation, integration, go-to-market. It's different domains, but they're using a lot of the similar things. And we're seeing it come from, of course, you already have it in the home, right? We're seeing that happen very quickly in small, medium enterprises, right? Not a space that we've traditionally in the BAS control space have been playing, but all of those buildings need these capabilities. So we're seeing that convergence come from the bottom up. And it's pretty similar to the way you see technology roll out today, right? The smartphone started as a consumer device.
Sure.
Right, and it took enterprise, it used to happen the other way.
Yeah.
Right? Enterprises had the technology first.
Right.
And now consumers get it first.
Sure.
So this convergence has already happened in the home, right? And it's now happening in small and medium enterprises. It's going to be in all the commercial buildings at some point.
And it makes sense because it does save money in operations. And as we get into more cybersecurity related situations, it makes more sense there. Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely headed that way.
Imagine you're doing 100% of your work on your mobile phone.
Yeah, for sure. Great. Okay, great. Well, Bill, thank you so much. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that was super interesting. I just hope the autonomous building doesn't take as long as the autonomous car. Just saying. No, I'm kidding. No, you never know, right? But anyway, so our next speaker, I'm proud to say, is from Honeywell. She actually runs quite a few of the divisions at Honeywell. And Sarah's been in the industry a little while now, so she got her feet wet during COVID, which was an interesting time. And she's done a great job managing the group. She's been elevated to some new positions, and we're glad to have her. Sarah Bencic from Honeywell, come on up. Thank you.
Thank you. Very excited to be here. And I love the theme that Scott and the Cochran Supply team have chosen for this event, because I think it's a perfect way to describe our industry. This idea of an odyssey, a long and wandering journey. And that's how it feels sometimes. When we think about, we're hearing this pace of acceleration and AI coming to new levels in 5 years, but at the same time, BACnet over IP has been around for a quarter century, and I would imagine every now and then you have a new install that's still MSTP. So we're kind of in this unique kind of fast, slow in terms of where we are on this journey, on this odyssey. And I feel like I'm very lucky to kind of join into this journey at this time where there is so much happening. As Scott mentioned, I've been now in the building industry for about 3 years, and I manage at Honeywell. I manage the BMS, our Building Management Solutions Group for our Americas, and general manager of that team. And I love being at events like this because if you think about the amount of experience and the different perspectives that are now housed in one room, and that each individual in this room came here because they want to talk about where integration's heading in the future and what are we going to be able to do with it. So Honeywell has their journey and their odyssey into building automation is much longer than mine. If you saw in the video, Honeywell was both one of the horses, so with the history in pneumatics, which there's still a lot of pneumatics out there, and then Honeywell was also one of the towers in the space colony. So they've really run the gamut with 10 million buildings worldwide, deployed with Honeywell solutions. We have over 4,000 patents in the building automation industry, and those span across not just building management systems, but also also fire, security, and the solutions that will continue, to Jim's point, to bring them more and more together. And so where are we looking? When we look at the future, what are we seeing as Honeywell? And we're focused in a couple different areas. And I think you'll find a lot of common themes from some of the speakers that are here today. One, very obviously, sustainability, where we're managing energy and carbon footprint. Operational efficiency, where we're providing better control of buildings and also making the integration process more seamless. And then the last being safety, which is keeping kind of a different spin or a way to think about security, keeping networks, people, and places safe. How did we come to these areas? It's really a function of what's happening not only in our industry, but just the world overall. And I think we've had some discussion around this already. If we think about sustainability, it's being driven in both ways. From a carrot perspective, unprecedented levels of funding available for clean energy. Over almost $370 million just for the first tranche of the Inflation Reduction Act. But it's also happening from the stick perspective as well, where we're seeing more and more regulations around forcing this pace forward of buildings having to meet certain carbon reduction commitments over a period of time. New York City being a great example of requiring large buildings to have a 40% carbon reduction by 2030. And so that's at the same time, while we're having this renewed commitment and the higher level commitment to sustainability, we're in a marketplace where 70% of the commercial square footage in the US was built before 1999. So we've got some work to do, and that's why folks are going to be looking to all of us to help them drive portfolio level sustainability goals and energy savings. Now, there's that demand because of this commitment, and we've got this tension because, as has been highlighted repeatedly, as I'm sure you feel on a daily basis, we've got a skills gap. Right, we're still only at 63% labor participation. We're not back up to pre-pandemic participation, and particularly for the demand for skilled folks and expertise is higher than anything else. The Bureau of Labor Statistics anticipates engineering skills, the demand will continue to grow at 13% compound annual growth all the way from today through 2031. So it's going to continue to be something that we're struggling with. It's not a this year or next year, it's something that we're going to have to continue to build solutions to help us solve. And that's going to come in different forms, but one of the big ways that we're going to be able to achieve that, we've got these enablers like AI, but overall, it's this move. It's driving this move towards digitized, remote, simplified experiences, both from an integration perspective and from the building management perspective. And then with that move towards digitization, obviously, it can create some risk from a cybersecurity perspective. Both in, we continue to see the number of instances of cybersecurity attacks increase, but also the complexity and the cost of them is becoming greater and greater as people progress their skill sets in that area. And so it continues to be fundamental for all of us to make sure that cybersecurity is the backbone of everything we do, because that's how we're going to continue to gain trust with buildings owners in the industry that this is the direction we need to head collectively. So I wanted to provide a couple areas, specific areas that aren't far in the future, but kind of first steps on this continuing odyssey, this continuing journey of where we're taking the sustainability, security, operational efficiency to the next level. Some examples of new frontiers that aren't way out in the future, but that we can see and touch today. And one of those new frontiers is connected power. So we all know buildings contribute 40% of the carbon footprint. And of that, where that energy is used in the building, obviously HVAC, where we've spent a lot of time in the history, is the energy hog, 50% on average of a building's energy usage. But the next piece of that usage is actually power consumed at the plug load level. And historically, the default has been to just leave plugs powered on 24/7. And that's been the default because there's really been no capability to monitor or control at that plug level. And that's really what we are doing today with connected power. So how does it work? It's a retrofit solution that essentially replaces standard sockets, or standard outlets, with intelligent outlets. And then those outlets are connected to hubs through Mira wireless mesh network. And then the hubs connect to the existing IP infrastructure through BACnet IP. More important than how it works is what can it do? First and foremost, it can unlock that 25% to give control now to be able to really touch and impact 75% of the building's energy usage through both HVAC and plug control. But that's not the only thing that it can do. And I'll touch on a couple of other areas. One is protecting critical assets. So you think about what are some of the things that we plug into the walls. Let's take refrigeration. If I have a biopharma lab and I've got some research going on that I'm plugged into the fridge, you better believe I don't want to redo that research and have it go down. And so that's another play for where connected power and that control can come in and that monitoring can come in to send those notifications when that equipment is starting to exhibit signs of potential failure and get ahead of damaging those critical assets. The other piece is safety. There are on average almost 17,000 fires that are caused, non-house fires that are caused from electrical distribution management or electrical related fires. And so with connected power, the actual outlet is able to monitor the heat level, and if that temperature exceeds the set point for heat level, it'll actually decommission the outlet and shut off power to the appliance immediately, reducing that risk of electrical fire. So connected power isn't the only step we've been taking into some of these new frontiers. Over the last year, we've renewed our entire portfolio, all the way from the plant controller, all the way down through our peripheral devices. And we did this for a couple reasons. One, I think we're all getting the message that the pace of acceleration of how fast we're moving forward is going to get faster and faster. And the needs of building managers are going to continue to change faster and faster. And so having one platform will enable us to innovate faster so we can help solve those problems collectively. But the main driver and the North Star as we launched and refreshed our portfolio was how do we make things easier? How do we help address this skills gap? And so that was really, we worked on, make efficiency and improving efficiency, and it manifests itself in a lot of different features, which you can definitely hear more about, anywhere from more universal IOs for flexibility on the hardware side, to having BLEs so we can help with mobile commissioning and balancing. But the piece that I want to talk about and focus on today that's truly a new frontier is T1L, which is a part of this platform. So what is T1L? T1L is a communications protocol. It's not a proprietary protocol to Honeywell. It was actually designed by the IEEE, and I call it the new standard, in quotes as you see up there, because they designed it in 2019. On top of that, major silicon manufacturers have been developing components to support the T1L protocol for over a decade. So what is it? It's effectively Ethernet all the way to the edge on twisted pair. And why is this so exciting? It's exciting for many different reasons, but the big one is that it has the speed of Cat5. It provides that Ethernet connection, but over twisted pair. So you think about, from an efficiency perspective, the possibilities on a retrofit side of being able to provide IP speed, Cat5 speed, without having to pull wire. You think about, from a new installation perspective, you can provide that same Cat5 speed, but over twisted pair, so you can avoid having to lay Cat5 and all of the crimping headaches that come with it. So we see a lot of potential here, and the fact that it is Ethernet means you also get the benefit of it being able to run all the IT security standards and make use of certificate-based encryption so that you have both a robust and secure communication protocol all the way through the edge. We talk about security, and I wanted to kind of close with the concept of security. I think it's been the recurring theme in everyone who's spoken today, and I think you'll see that trend continuing. And it really is at the heart and the backbone of everything that we do. If I look specifically to our optimizer platform, it meets both 802.1x device authentication, which enables organizations to enact their own rules in terms of where those endpoints and how those endpoints interact with their IT networks. It also supports ISA 62443 certification at level 2, which is currently kind of the gold standard from a cybersecurity perspective. But if we look to some of the other industries, if we look to what's happening in some of these panels at IBCon, those standards are going to continue to get more and more rigorous, as they should, and as the threat of cybersecurity continues to evolve. If we look at even the industrial automation industry, the prerequisite for most of the applications there is level 3 for ISA 62443. 443. So we anticipate that'll continue to become a more and more rigorous process. But it is something that we all own because, again, cybersecurity is really, and having that confidence that we can provide connected solutions that are secure is how we're going to continue to advance this pace of progress. And so with that, I will close with a quote from the OG Odyssey, that the journey that stirs you is not far off. And that's because it's not something in the future. It's something that we're standing in and we're progressing today. We think about the possibility of some of these new technologies. We think about some of the ways that you're thinking of using these technologies that no one's thought of before. It really truly makes now the time to reimagine what we can do with building automation and building operations.
Awesome, thank you. So Sarah, that was awesome. Thank you so much. So the connected power conversation, that's really cool.
It is.
I think that's new for a lot of us. I've noticed personally, like in the decarbonization conversations, that there's a new influx of people wanting to do something better for these buildings, especially as Sarah mentioned with, what'd you say, 70% of the buildings built before 99, is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and to be able to go in and really take a nick out of that part of the energy, we're always doing these payback calcs and all this other stuff for mechanical equipment. I think that the plug load could be a huge area to save energy in buildings. And Honeywell, and this is going to be a BAS product, is that correct? The connected power?
Yep, we definitely see that connectivity of, again, taking that next step in terms of what we're able to control.
Yeah, for sure. And so with that too, and you move into the T1L conversation, I know a lot of people are really excited about that technology. And when will we actually see the first versions of it available, like in the actual market space where people are able to buy it off the shelf today?
In the back of the room today.
Is it ready today?
Yeah.
Nicole?
We've done installations.
Can I get a verification? Okay, all right. All right. Well, that's good. I guess that was a bad question. I should have known that, I guess, but I know we're excited about it. And T1L, of course, Honeywell, they were like the largest lawn reseller for many, many years. Is that a lot of that strategy to help retrofit that old lawn? A lot of the embedded systems that you guys have already put in?
Yeah, I mean, there's still a huge install base of lawn applications out there, so this is a great solution for that. I think what we're finding that was maybe a little bit of a surprise is the benefits for new installs because of the high rate of failure of Cat 5 when you're laying and crimping, that the labor savings there are even higher than we anticipated.
Awesome, and you can daisy chain devices on it, so your lengths can go for forever, I mean, for a long ways. So.
Yeah, the length is a kilometer, and so if you're putting devices every 300 meters, then you can basically have 2 of those 3 devices fall out and you can still have a communicating system.
That's awesome. Cool. Awesome. So some really exciting stuff from Honeywell, huh, folks? Kind of good to hear, right? So thank you, Sarah. All right. Well done.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Put this up here. Okay. So I can see you all need a break. Just a short one, though. So before we go, though, I'd like to thank Distech, who bought us all breakfast this morning. Wait, what am I doing this right? Oh, do you want me to do the clicker? Sorry. There we go. There we go. Thank you for the wonderful breakfast burritos, one of my favorites. And so we're gonna close this morning part.